Hi guys, this is TechMedica, and welcome back to a new video. As you can see here, we have a load of DSs in different states of disrepair. Some of them need new top screens, some have broken hinges, some of them just need love altogether, just like real people. And just like real people, I'm going to offer them a real helping hand. So I'm going to shuffle all these DSs up and pick our lucky winner of the day. I'm doing this blind, but you're going to have to believe me. Either way, our lucky winner is a pink one. I don't really like pink, but that doesn't really matter. DS has a broken top hinge, ugly screens, and an iffy GBA port. Obviously, you can see how overcooked those screens are, and unfortunately, I don't have another pink shell, so we're going to use a special edition shell. Actually, this is not a special edition shell, that is a bootleg shell. This is what a real shell looks like. Don't ever be deceived by fake shells, because although they look similar, there are very distinct differences. For instance, real special editions are shiny, while fake ones tend to be matte. Before I took this DS fully apart, I had to make sure that the GBA would work properly. I made sure to spray some rubbing alcohol in the port, and I took the GBA in and out over and again. There's a joke to be made there, but I'm not really going to go into that. I wanted to double check if there was any other issues with the device, but there didn't seem to be really anything significant, so I went ahead and decided to disassemble the thing. I also wanted to mention that for those of you who just joined my channel, decided to subscribe, and left me all those lovely comments on my last video, I greatly appreciate you. You're literally amazing. I never thought that video would blow up, and I am just so pleased that that happened. Regardless if you're new or returning and watching my video, thank you so much. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to see everything you do. Now that we got to the innards of the DS, I have to make sure that we get that top screen out, because that baby is baked to a crisp, the crispiest chip I've ever seen. And that's okay, we're going to just remove it and make sure it doesn't exist anymore. I was fortunate enough that our motherboard had no real problems with it, and so this was going to be probably an easy fix. I mean, disassembling it was also quite easy, and it was quite smooth. Although I did get slight PTSD for removing that back part of the casing. Next, I had to remove the rubbers. Like always, I take them off with a nice dental pick, but these little tabs decide to fly off into the universe and ascend. I don't blame them. Sometimes I like to ascend on Mondays, because those days suck. Although little did I know I was jinxing myself all this entire time. I was trying to have a little bit of a speed run when taking this apart, so I did it under 10 minutes. And I thought, this is going to be so easy, I'm not going to have major problems with this, I'm just going to get it done. But like true Medica faction, I jinxed myself. I did decide to keep this top screen though, and not murder it and end its life, because I needed a new test screen because I horribly murdered the last one. Sometimes I question why I chose this hobby, but then I remember how much I love it. But at the same time, I have no patience for anything, and I am doing a very intensive hobby. Ignoring that, I'm going to pull out our new screen, dab some flux on it, give it a nice jab, and then put some solder on, because I need it as glue. Normally I don't have a hard time attaching new speakers to a new screen, or I guess old speakers to a new screen, but this was a little bit challenging. The wires kept just wiggling, going anywhere they wanted to be besides where they belong, and it was annoying me. I am thinking of making this a new series on my channel called DS in a Basket or something like that. If you have any other clever names, please think of one. But basically, in the comments below, I would love if you commented a number, a random number, preferably a 1 out of 20. And with that random number, I'm going to pick a random DS each video to work on. Not only is that fun for me and makes me more productive, but then you get to contribute in each video. Another factor to this is that there's actually 3 special editions I have to work on. So if you pick a special edition, that's going to be the one I work on. Of course, probably for the next few videos, I will be doing it as a blind pick, but the next numbered video I get, I will pick one of your comments. So remember, pick a number between 1 and 20. I had to steal a black frame from a different DS I had lying around. Of course, this is in parts, so I could just steal this frame with no problem and no guilt in mind, but it did have a good hinge, it's just the screen was bad. So I thought this was a good deal. I would take the screen from it, take the frame off, and probably use a different hinge, at least for now, because I want this DS to look semi-presentable since it's going to be a bootleg after all, or a fake, you know. I want this fake to look fabulous, even though it is a fake. So just like people in real life, I used a fake hinge, and I decided to put our new frame in there and line it together. And this is where my jinx started coming into fruition. The DS gods were unhappy with me, and they wanted to send me a sign. I decided to use an aftermarket hinge piece. Of course, there's a problem with that. Aftermarket hinge pieces always are a pain. They never cooperate. They always have issues. They always have a part that's too large or too small, and it doesn't fit quite right. So you kind of have to do a lot of forcing. Kind of reminds me of a Karen and having to argue with them, and them insisting that they're right, when in fact they're wrong. And this is what's like working with aftermarket frames. I'll try to leave a picture later, but actually because of all these issues I was having with this hinge piece, I ended up damaging the top screen slightly later on. Sometimes when you force screens too hard into one place, they can damage the LCD and cause the pixels to become dead or leak or something else, but it's not pleasant. And luckily it was not severe or anything like that, but I decided to leave this DS alone for a few days to see if it would get worse before I listed it to sell. I want to make it a point to show you how much I sell each DS for, because I think that would be fun. Probably in the comments below I'll highlight it. I'll show you how much this DS ends up selling for later on, because I think this video will upload before I sell it. This top part of the DS was a royal pain in the tush. As you can see, I'm just putting it together because it decided to gaslight me into thinking that all was well. And I even hammered a new hinge piece in, rolled up this new screen, which is harder than it looks. Of course, I'm experienced, so it's easier for me. But in reference, if you're putting a new screen, a brand new screen in for the first time, it could be really painful. I already scraped and maimed this top hinge piece, but it wasn't enough, and it was still teasing me. It was being an absolute jerk. I mean, so rude, right? But it's fine. The DS gods have a way of telling us messages from a past life and telling us what we need to do in our future. For instance, I dedicated so much of my childhood to DSs and playing Pokemon games like Pokemon Black, Soul Silver, Diamond, Pearl, all those great games, and so now I am paying them back for all those favors they gave to me as a child. And I'm helping the environment in the same time, because the environment needs some help, and this prevents e-waste, and I really hate waste. Like, really hate. I loathe it. I despise it. I'm totally not stalling for this part of the video, because I've had to take this part out 50 times, I swear. It was so painful. I even ripped chunks out of this hinge piece. I decided, it murdered a speaker. Like, look at this. That's just murder. It murdered a speaker. That was so rude. I mean, can you imagine murdering somebody? I mean, I haven't done that before. Totally not. I'm just kidding. Or am I? I guess you'll never know, because you don't know me. But that's fine. So I put all these parts back in, and I tried to shove it in there if it wanted to. And then I used some lovely Squishmallow tape. If you don't know what Squishmallows are, you haven't lived yet. They're the best stuffed animals in the world. I don't care if you know that about myself now. You're just going to have to accept that I use Squishmallow tape inside of DSs. It always makes me kind of chuckle thinking that people don't know what's inside these DSs or what I put in here. Obviously, I'm not putting anything bad, but it's funny because I'll put cutesy tape and things like that, and I just imagine people who are like the opposite of cutesy getting these DSs and being like, oh, I got this cool DS, I'm so rad now. And then little do they know that there's Squishmallow colorful like rainbow tape inside. So now the screen was finally cooperating, at least I think so, I hope so, I pray so. Please, DS gods, allow me to fix this DS. Of course, like all true aftermarket shells, I had to hammer it in because it's the only way it would go in.
A few moments later.
And I finally forced it to be together and be like an unhappy married couple with little to no compromise, just like any good relationship. Either way, screwing these screws in was not difficult because they're screws, although they had to be going a little bit crooked, just like everything else in life. Also, please let me know if my mic quality sounds better. I did adjust some settings. I feel like it sounds better, but do let me know. I'm also speaking a little bit louder in this video so that it sounds nicer. Either way, I finally can put this hinge piece in, and oh boy, it was a toughie. It did not want to go in. Just like the hinge pieces, it did not want to compromise, so I had to hit a few times to make sure it would compromise, cause that's how that works. We finally started making progress, and I was so happy to be done with the DS Gods trials. After all, they were quite grueling and difficult. And if you can't tell this is sarcasm, I'm sorry, but most of my videos is sarcasm, and that's just how I roll. Either way, we slide that number right in there, make sure it's all nice and good before we move on. With hinge pieces, you also want to make sure that they're nice and tight, because if they're loose at all, they will not work correctly, especially with aftermarket parts. Double check, triple check. What is that saying? Measure twice, cut once? It's kind of the same thing. Then I made sure to clean each and every piece with utmost care, because they were filthy and needed a good cleaning, and the brush is the best way to do that. Please let me know if you're enjoying this video so far. I really tried hard on this one and really wanted to impress you guys, so let me know if I have improved or what else I should do. Another problem I had with this DS is I didn't really have any bottom screens available. Most of my bottom screen LCDs were dead, dying, or broken in some sort of fashion, and so while I was cleaning these pads, I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, so I'm going to have to come up with a situation that will work. The best idea I could come with was taking a screen that was fully functional, great touch screen and everything, and basically rip it apart so that I could combine the black part with the good LCD, you know what I mean. But before that, I had to try this unmarked black LCD, and if you can guess, like true Medica fashion, it didn't work. I really need to be better about labeling things or testing things. It's possible that the screen came from a dead motherboard and I just never bothered to test it, which is entirely possible, but I don't really know. Sometimes I'm just lazy or forget because I have the memory of a goldfish, as some say, but that's okay. I can be whoever I want to be, right? Next I have to clean the bumpers off, the triggers, whatever you want to call them. I've heard them called so many different names, and make sure that they were functional and doing the springy thing. And then I had to make sure the screen worked, obviously, and it didn't. I kind of didn't really show a good shot of it not working, but basically I had a bunch of dead pixels on one side. And here comes our donor board. I'm going to steal its organs for another screen. Unfortunately, it was perfectly healthy, but I decided to kill it. I mean, I don't do murder. I don't do that. Anyway, so now I'm cutting into this black one, which is totally fine, ripping off the face of it off so that I can use the touchscreen, because the touchscreen was perfectly functional. It was just the LCD was having issues, and that's fine. We all have issues. The easiest way to line up a touchscreen is to use your housing to your advantage. I talked about this a little bit in the last video, but I'm guessing most of you were more focused on our buggy visitors last video. But that's okay, I'll remind you again. Using housing is so helpful. It makes it so much easier to line things up, make sure you don't get things all dirtied, and reusing the glue that's already there. Of course, this glue sucks, so be mindful of that. But I also had to remember that this other touchscreen was perfectly fine. I just needed the LCD, so I used some more Squishmallow tape to stick those together. I tend to sandwich the parts together and press along the edges to make sure that they stick. Of course, this is not a very good seal, but you don't really need a great seal in my experience because the frame itself on the housing will hold it down too. So it will not pop out, it will not have issues, and there's not really much to worry about besides like maybe water resistance. But these DS's are so old, they have like no water resistance at all. They can barely handle a droplet of water. And don't mind my struggle there, but they barely can handle anything, so even if they lose a little bit of water resistancy, it's not a huge deal. They can't handle water at all. You look at them wrong. You cry at it and it would die. So it's just a general rule of thumb to avoid water on electronics. I'm telling you that, and just in case you didn't know, but you know, just to educate you. in case you weren't sure. And we have to do the springy things. The springy springs do the spring springs and the spring town. And thus we must put the springs in the spring location, which is the spring location. I don't know if you knew that, but that's what I did. I had to do the same thing on the other side with the spring on the spring thing in the spring location in the spring town. And I had to make sure the springy springs springed and clicked like the springy spring. Anyway, so then I put the back of the housing back, because that is the back of the housing. I put some screws in and was praying to the DS gods that there was no other problems. Either way, look at the 6 shot I did. Wow, amazing. I am so good at things. Either way, now we were at the final moments. Will this DS work? Will it be a flip or a flop? We will find out. Don't mind the Japanese, it's temporary. DSs are region free, so you can change the language at any time. It's super nice, right? Unlike the 3DSs, they don't have that issue. So the keys seem to work, touch, shoulder buttons, all is well. Now GBA's turn. GBA works, amazing sauce. And now our DS game, the most important part. It doesn't read. That's unfortunate. But after some effort and some blowing, it worked again. Then I wanted to make sure that the mic was functional. I feel like a lot of YouTubers, or just people in general, tend to neglect the mic functionality, even though I have had a lot of consoles where they just don't work. But I had to make sure that the DS slot was working, and the easiest way of doing that is putting some isopropyl alcohol on the card and just moving it in and out of that slot so that it works correctly. Next was the final touches, putting the rubbers back on. Luckily, these rubbers didn't ascend and were here with us today. And that's great, because they had a job to do, to hide the ugly bits and pieces of the DS and to make sure that the top part doesn't damage the bottom part. Then I had to make sure that the panels were all together. For instance, the back half of the shell was actually attached and fully latched on like it should be. I want to take this moment to remind you all to pick a number between 1 and 20, subscribe, leave a like, comment in general, tell me about your day. Anything's appreciated. I love you guys, and thank you so much. Next, I had to pick a good black piece for the back of this DS. I only had old ratty ones, so I had to clean this off, and it was very stuck on there and grimy. I tried scraping it off. It just wasn't coming off as much as I wanted it to, and eventually I had to resort to a Clorox wipe. There's nothing wrong with a Clorox wipe, except that they're water-ish, and like I said before, DSs don't like the Wawa, but that's fine. It worked out fine. I let it dry, put all the back pieces back, and it was almost done. Now I just have to make sure the entirety of the DS was clean and spick and span. And that's what I did. And look at how cool it looks. Definitely not a DS from hell, but definitely was a difficult repair regardless. I still love it as I put all these finishing touches. It's probably my favorite part, making sure everything's clean, everything's together. Now that we're finally done, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everything you do. Have a great day. Peace!